What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Tea with Carly. I'm your host, Carly, aka Teacher Carly, and I am so excited for today's episode because we're talking about one of my favorite things, and that is food. I am a firm believer that food is life, and I just really love food. And we're gonna go even deeper. Like food, I mean, anybody can talk about food. What's your favorite food? What do you like to eat? But we're gonna go even beyond that and talk about the significance of food when it comes to culture and language. So I'm really excited to dive into that with you all today. Before I start, I just want to share a little personal story that I have that involves food, language, and culture all in one. So when I was in Korea, I moved to Korea in 2012, and I lived there for quite some time. And when I first moved to Korea, I didn't really speak any Korean. I only knew the basics, but I was attending a university there where I could learn Korean, and I learned rather quickly. It was difficult, I'm not gonna lie, but because I was fully immersed in the language and the culture by living there, I was able to pick up on Korean rather quickly. So the first year I was living in Korea, I moved there in July of 2012. By that fall, there was a holiday called Chuseok, which is basically Korean Thanksgiving. And the school was closed because Koreans take that holiday very seriously. It's one of the few times a year where Korea actually shuts down. I was able to spend time with my then ex-husband's family. But although so much has happened between now and then, and obviously I don't like to look back on the regrets that I've made in my life, but one thing that I still cherish to this day is the time that I was able to spend with my then husband, which is my former husband, my ex-husband's grandmother during that time, because my husband was in the military. My ex-husband, he was in the military, so he wasn't able to be there. And my ex-husband's parents, they were just really busy people. But for me, I didn't have anything else better to do. So I just spent time with his grandma, and she taught me how to cook. And we spent like 3 or 4 days learning how to cook together. I was trying to teach her some American dishes, and more importantly, she was trying to teach me some Korean dishes. And she actually did teach me a lot of Korean dishes, not only during that time, but throughout my stay in Korea, that I still make literally on the daily here in America. My family, we love Korean food. My oldest son is half Korean, and we love eating Asian food. So I cook Korean food all the time, and that's because I learned how to cook Korean food quite well when I was living in Korea because of my ex-husband's grandma. And so despite everything that happened and what transpired between my ex-husband and I, and how our relationship fell apart, despite all of that, one thing that I truly do love and cherish is the time that I was able to share with my ex-grandmother-in-law over food. Food brought us together, and it kind of opened a door for us to be able to communicate, because it was extremely difficult for us to communicate. I was trying my best to speak Korean. She didn't speak any English, and it was hard, but food definitely brought us together. And the best part of it all, I probably am the best at making kimchi jjigae. For a white girl, I would say I'm really good at making kimchi jjigae, which is kimchi stew, a Korean stew. I'm pretty good at it, and that's all thanks to her. So that's just a little short story I wanted to share with you all about how food kind of brought together two different cultures, two different languages, and created something beautiful. It was a good experience for both of us. But now let's go and get into the nitty-gritty of today. So the reason why I wanted to talk about food is because food is basically its own language. Like, you can communicate through food if you really think about it. And then also there's so much vocabulary that you can learn in regards to food. I mean, we have terms like meal, snack, ingredient, recipe, and then you have the verbs like boil, fry, bake, grill, or saute. And then you have like the different food groups, which of course people know, like fruits and vegetables, but proteins, like the meats, and then grains like rice or bread. And then you have your adjectives: spicy, sweet, sour, salty, bitter, tasty, delicious, crunchy, creamy. The list goes on and on. There's so many vocabulary words that you can learn based off of food. And this is literally just a short snippet. Like, if I were to list everything related to food, we would be here all day. There's so many different types of terms that you can learn, not just terms, but like adjectives, verbs, even phrases. There's a lot of phrases and expressions and idioms, colloquialisms that we use in America are food related. I think I actually did a whole YouTube video on it one time, and I only went over a handful, but there are several dozens probably of expressions or idioms that are related to food. I mean, off the top of my head, the expression to bite off more than you can chew. That's related to food, right? To bite off more than you can chew. That means to take more responsibility than basically you can handle, but that's an expression that we use. We also say spill the beans when we're talking about, we want to know a secret and we want somebody to tell us the secret. So we say, hey, spill the beans, or even spill the tea, which is like, also similar to spill the beans. Again, food related. We can say, I have a full plate. That was one of the first YouTube videos that I ever created, was a lot on my plate, or a full plate, which means that you have a lot of stuff to do, And then there's like the really corny ones, like cool as a cucumber, which means just to stay calm during a stressful situation. But there's so many different words, expressions, phrases, idioms that are related to food. And this is important because when you come to America, or if you ever plan on coming to America, or even just you plan to make American friends, or you want to learn how to speak English like a native for other reasons, if you are going to have a conversation with a native English speaker, most likely the topic of food is going to arise. Or there's going to be some colloquialism stated that references food, because food is such a big part of our culture, not just American culture. I mean, food has a cultural significance in so many different cultures throughout the world. And that kind of segues into my other point that I wanted to make with you guys. Food has power, okay? Food is deeply tied to the cultural identity, traditions, and communities of hundreds of cultures throughout the world. I mean, when we think about it, in America, Thanksgiving, when people think of Thanksgiving, they don't even think about the cultural significance behind the actual holiday. People think of food. They think of turkey, they think of the cranberry sauce, the pumpkin pie. Ooh, that's me right there. I love some pumpkin pie. And they think of just being with their family and eating. That's how we celebrate Thanksgiving here in America. Then we have like Lunar New Year. At the time of this recording, Lunar New Year is next week. In fact, whenever this goes live on the 22nd, Lunar New Year will be exactly 1 week away. And because I've had the privilege to live in Asian countries and also be a part of Asian households with my husband and his family, I'm able to experience true Lunar New Year traditions from, a Vietnamese standpoint. My husband now is Vietnamese. And then, of course, when I was living in Korea, I was able to experience it through a Korean standpoint. And it's the same. Like, everything is revolved around food and, traditions. With a Vietnamese household, it's there's this dish that I love called bánh tét, which is very delicious. It's one of my favorite things. My mother-in-law always buys extra when she knows that I'm coming over, because she knows that I love it so much. And of course, there's plenty of other dishes that Vietnamese people eat on Lunar New Year as well, but that is my favorite because it is specific to the new year. There are other times throughout the year that you could, of course, eat it, But for me, I don't know how to make it, and the grocery stores do not sell it unless it's Lunar New Year. So I definitely stock up and I eat my weight in bantet during Lunar New Year. And then it's also just about being with family, giving the red envelope money and saying like Happy New Year, all the well wishes, and playing some traditional games together. So it's definitely based solely upon food, though. It's like you eat your food and then everything else transpires after that. I have a lot of Indian friends, and they say like for Diwali, the sweets and special meals celebrating the festival of lights, everything is kind of revolved around the food that they eat, especially the sweet foods and the meals that they prepare. And then also in Muslim communities, you have like fasting during Ramadan and stuff like that. Like food is just the center of so many cultures, and we do not really realize it half the time. It's the one thing that every human has in common, is that we need to eat to survive. We can come together because if we don't have anything else in the world in common, at least we have that in common. We eat to survive, we eat to live, and if you go over long enough the long list of the foods that you like to eat, odds are you're going to find something in common that you and someone else both love to eat and enjoy. So it's a conversation starter for sure. I also wanted to give like a few more examples of how food can influence language. I know I mentioned earlier the expressions and idioms that we have, but one just came to mind. My mom used to tell me all the time when I was growing up, "You are what you eat." It is an expression that we have here in America, and it basically just means that people's like food choices influence their health and like their character and their well-being. And so people say you are what you eat. So my mom used to say it to me all the time, because a lot of times we would joke around or I would say something and I don't know, like I would say, I want some ham. And ham is like, of course, pork. And then my mom would be like, well, you are what you eat. And if you think about it, it's like a short little joke, like you're a little piggy because you're eating all the ham or whatever. But it's just a little joke that we can use, saying like, oh, you are what you eat. Okay. And then some people say, well, I must be sexy then because, people give like stupid examples. But when I was growing up, my mom used to say that to me a lot because I was the sliced deli bandit in my house. That was like my nickname. I loved deli meats, especially like ham. And before, when I was really young, I used to like bologna. Then it went to ham and then eventually turkey for a little bit. But ham was always my favorite. And my mom would buy it for like my school lunches or stuff, and she would have like a huge pack that she would get from like a wholesale store. Like here in America, we have Sam's, we have Costco. So my parents would get this, and they would make sure that they have enough to pack like my lunch or my parents' lunches. And I would sneak into the kitchen, and there was like a island in the middle of the kitchen. So my parents, when they were sitting in the living room, they could see the kitchen, but there's this huge island, which is like basically a huge cabinet and table in the middle of the kitchen. And then directly behind that was the refrigerator. So I would like sneak behind the island, like carefully and slowly open the refrigerator door, and the bottom drawer of the refrigerator was the deli meats. I would get ham, and I'm telling you, like 5 or 6 pieces of ham, and I would get it out, and then I would shut the door back ever so gently, and then I would run to my room and I would eat it, because I have always been a meat and potatoes girl. Like I love protein. I'm not, even as an adult, I could care less so much about sweets. I don't really care for sweets. I will eat it every now and then, but I'm not one of those people that's like, oh my gosh, I need something sweet. No, I love meat and I love bitter. So even if when I drink my coffee or whenever, I like it to be slightly on the bitter side, not sweet. And then if I had the choice between a slice of cake and a steak, I'm going to choose a steak. I would much rather have meat than anything sweet. So when I was growing up, my mom used to tell me like, "Did you steal the ham again?" And I said, "Oh no, I don't know what you're talking about." She's like, "Carly, you are what you eat." And then it's like a little joke because, when you think about it, that means I'm a little piggy. And yeah, it was true. Even still to this day, I feel like I am a little piggy sometimes. But yeah, so food just really truly influences language, even to, down to the expressions and idioms that we use, especially the culture. Like I'm talking solely based on the culture that I have experienced, which is mainly here in America, but also I've been influenced by my Vietnamese husband, and then I've been influenced by living in Korea for so long. So I know a little bit about other cultures, but definitely in American culture, food is top priority and it influences our language. The last little thing that I wanted to talk about today, which I know this is kind of a quick podcast, but I was so excited to talk about food and to share so many different things that I feel like I talked very fast. So I apologize if you guys are like, "Oh my God, Carly's talking so fast." But I just wanted to encourage you guys here for a second, because I know sometimes it can be hard when you're trying to learn another language and you don't know where to start. And sometimes you can feel like, well, I'm comfortable in my own community, in my own culture, in my own language because of this, and this. And you're like, I don't know how, I don't know how I can portray myself, truly myself, in another language. I wanted to let you guys know that I experienced the same thing. When it comes to me and my normal self here in America and speaking English, I am a very funny person. I love humor and I like to be funny. I like to have fun. And that's basically how I built my personality. Like my whole life, I was always the funny fat girl. And when I moved to Korea and I had to try to portray my personality in a second language, it was extremely difficult. I had kind of a loss of identity for a while because I didn't know how to be Carley in another language. I didn't know how to be myself. And I think it was partially because there at the beginning, of course, I didn't know how to express myself because I didn't know enough Korean to do so. And I couldn't comprehend why the jokes that made sense in my language were not, transferring or translating properly when I tried to say them in Korean. In fact, I would sometimes try to tell jokes and directly translate them, and it turned out completely horribly wrong. Like to the point where people were looking at me like, "Are you okay? Like, do you need to go to a mental institution?" And I'm like, okay, well, in American culture, in English, this is a hilarious joke, but apparently something went wrong in translation because now they think I'm crazy. So there was a good year or two when I first started out learning Korean where I felt like there is no way I'm going to be able to express myself and be my true self in Korean. But eventually, I don't know exactly how or the time and place that it occurred, but it got easier. I know I never stopped learning, even though I wasn't able to go to school anymore whenever I had my son and everything, and I was like very busy. I became extremely busy and I couldn't actively go to university to learn Korean. I still made it a point to study. And even still to this day, I tell you guys all the time, I study Korean every day, even if it's just for 5 minutes. And that's part of the reason why I make my YouTube videos short. I've mentioned this in a couple of my videos and even my podcast before, but I want to be able to have you guys enjoy watching my channel and not feel like it's an actual class. I want you guys to be able to listen to my podcast, which are a little bit longer. My podcast, if you notice, are the longest things on my channel, and that's because they're not meant for you to sit down and watch. They're meant for you to throw on and listen to, maybe on your commute or something like that. But when it comes to actually learning and my YouTube videos that I post, I want you guys to be in a relaxed setting. I don't want you guys to feel like, oh, here I go, I have to watch this 1 hour long YouTube episode so I can learn these 5 idioms. No, I want to condense that into 15, 20 minutes tops, but typically my videos are even less than 15 minutes because I know that we are all so busy, but I know that we also have so many goals. And I'm telling you, one day randomly I was just able to express myself in Korean and be myself and let my personality shine through. And I don't know how or why or when that occurred. It just happened. And I think it's because I didn't give up. I kept on, studying, and I immersed myself in the culture, and especially with like friends that didn't speak English. I had to only speak Korean with them, and I learned through them as well, not just only through a textbook, but I had to get out there and learn all those things. And I know I'm kind of getting off the topic of food here for a moment, and I know my last episode of Tea with Carley was supposed to be the one all about motivation, but I just hope the story that I share with you guys actually motivates you a little bit as well, because honestly, it's hard. It's hard to learn another language, and it's hard to keep up with it as well, even after you learn it. I mean, I notice myself forgetting words every now and then because I don't speak Korean as much as I used to or as I would like, because I'm living in America right now and I don't have as many Korean friends that I'm close to as I used to, or I still have plenty of Korean friends that I'm close to, but they've also been on an English language journey and they want to communicate with me in English. And it's like, oh, well, I want to be able to help them as well. So sometimes it's difficult because it's like, okay, well, now we're speaking English even though we used to speak Korean, and now I don't have a chance to speak Korean with you today. Or we make a schedule like, okay, one day you're going to speak Korean with me and the next day you're going to speak English with me, along those lines. But just don't give up, because eventually it's going to become evident, become clear that you can indeed express your own self in a second language. You don't have to worry about it as much as you used to. So I want to also end. I know I just said that I was ending this right now with with that little short story, but I just also wanted to tell you guys that there's an expression that we use that also is related to food. Oh my gosh, there's so many of them. But it's don't cry over spilled milk. And I'm not sure if I've taught this one on my YouTube channel or not, but it's basically just means to stop worrying about things that are out of your control or that can't be undone. And I feel like when we're on a language learning journey, we want to be where we want to be immediately. Like, I have students that come to me and they're like, how can I learn how to speak exactly like you in 6 months? And I'm like, well, I hate to break it to you, but I don't think that's doable. Like, learning English takes time. You can definitely make goals, and you can be at your first, goal in 6 months or maybe even sooner than that. But one of the things that many people feel is so intimidating about, being on a language journey, especially learning English, which is one of the most difficult languages in the world, is that it takes commitment and a long time. And then that gets people worried, like, well, am I ever going to be able to speak English like a native? Am I ever going to be able to understand when I'm watching a movie and I don't have subtitles on? Am I ever going to be able to make friends and be able to understand everything that they're saying when they're speaking in English? Like, those things are all like it's just all your anxiety, and you're just wasting your time worrying about it. Like, don't cry over spilled milk. You can't change the pace in which you are learning. I mean, you could, but you don't want to disrupt your flow of life too much. And honestly, I feel like if you were to just cram and get it over with and try to learn as much English as possible, you're not going to retain it. It takes time. I'm not saying that it can't be done. I'm pretty sure there's somebody out there who is a genius that did learn how to speak another language fluently in 6 months. But for most people, the average Joe like you and I, it's going to take time, and it's going to take commitment, and it's going to take years of practice, but you need to actually put in the work. There's the main difference. You can, example again, you can cry over spilled milk saying like, oh, like I'm never going to be able to speak English, or I'm so worried that, I'm going to put in so much time and effort and it's never going to, be in my benefit. You can do that. Yeah. You can totally just whine about it, or you can do something about it. And that means put in the work. A lot of people just cry, oh, I don't know how to speak English. I've been studying English for 20 years and I still can't speak. Well, then you probably haven't been studying English for 20 years. You probably started studying English 20 years ago, stopped for 18 years, and now you're studying again. Like, that's probably what happened. It's not that you've been studying consistently. Consistency is key. So yeah, I totally took a different turn with this. I did not plan to end on that motivational note, but I feel like sometimes ending on a motivational note is a good thing because it keeps you guys motivated for the next episode or for your next step on your English language journey, whether that be here on my YouTube channel or in your own studies or on other YouTube channels or podcasts out there. So yeah, today we talked about food. We did a quick run through, and then I had like a 10-minute motivational speech at the end. Who would have known? But I just want to leave on the note that food and culture and language is more intertwined than you would think. And I know I started with the story of how I was able to learn how to cook Korean food that one Chuseok or Korean Thanksgiving with my ex-grandmother-in-law, and how even still to this day it's a very special, near and dear memory to me, and I value that time very much that I spent with her during those few days learning how to cook Korean food, because I learned a lot about the culture. I learned a lot of Korean that I didn't know, like steam and boil and stuff like those words. And I also was able to just have some good quality time. So you never know where food can take you. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Tea with Carley. If you did, please like, comment, and subscribe. And I hope to see you all in the next episode. Fire